My name is Eleanor Vance, Ellie, and my job is to listen. No, I'm not a therapist, not anymore. I'm just a voice on the phone, on the night shift at a place we call Echoing Voices Telemarketing. But some of the callers here, they aren't human. And rule number one, the most important one, the one that seared itself into my soul, never ever put a caller on hold for more than 60 seconds. Because what fills the silence on the line is something far, far worse than elevator music. It's the very voice of the void. I used to be a grief counselor. I helped dozens of people find peace, process their pain, reconnect with the world. But then came Sarah. Sarah was young, brilliant, and she broke. I missed it. I lost her. My failure. Guilt gnawed at me, hollowed me out. I quit therapy. The deep conversations, the attentive listening. I needed a job where the connection was superficial, where I could just read a script, where I couldn't fail anymore. That's how I ended up at Echoing Voices. A drab brick building squeezed into a forgotten industrial park miles from the city. The neon lights of phantom offices flickered around in what seemed like an apocalyptic industrial landscape. Inside, it was even worse, a maze of identical cubicles lit by fluorescent hums like trapped insects. The air was heavy, smelling of stale coffee and stagnant despair. There were no windows, just the darkness of the night outside and the darkness of 1,000 life stories within, all filtered through cheap headsets. I was just a voice on a line, and that was exactly what I wanted to be. My supervisor was Evelyn Hayes, a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back tightly and eyes of such a pale blue they seemed almost transparent. She never smiled. Her voice was flat, emotionless, yet it carried the weight of someone who had seen too much. On my first night, she handed me an old tablet with the scripts and a laminated card. "These are the rules, Eleanor," she said without blinking. "They aren't company policy. They're protocols for survival. If you want to see the sun rise again, follow them and never ever break them out of curiosity. Because curiosity here is the price of your silence." The other new hire was Chad Michaels, fresh out of college, 22 years old, eyes full of ambition and the unwavering belief that he would reinvent telemarketing. He laughed at the rules, calling them nonsense to motivate night shift losers. He was everything I wasn't anymore, full of hope, naive, and dangerously cocky. And he was about to learn the truth about silence. At Echoing Voices, we didn't sell anything. We were a customer support center for a network of discontinued electronic devices from a company called Nexus Echo Industries. Nobody knew exactly what they did, but the paychecks arrived on time. I had 8 rules. The first few were simple, easy to follow. Rule number 5, never use your real name. Use your assigned pseudonym. Mine was Operator 734. Evelyn explained it was to maintain customer privacy. Chad thought it was silly. Rule number 2, never hang up on a caller no matter what they say. Technical glitches sometimes cause strange feedback, Evelyn explained. You need to stay on the line for the system to log the error. But I could already feel it wasn't just a technical problem. The callers here, they were different. Their voices were almost whispers, laden with a melancholy I recognized, but one far deeper than human grief. They spoke of disconnection, fragmentation, losing the signal, of wanting reconnection, finalization. Sometimes their calls came with strange background noise, a low hum, a sound like distant wind, or even a muffled chorus of voices that seemed to echo from a void. I listened, read my script, and felt safe in my neutrality. Chad, on the other hand, was a tornado. He talked too much, laughed loudly, and tried to cheer up the callers. He refused to use his pseudonym, insisting that building a personal connection was key to success. Evelyn watched him from her elevated desk, with those transparent eyes that seemed to see through walls. Then came rule number 1. The first one Chad broke, and the most devastating. It was around 1:45 in the morning. Chad was on a call, visibly frustrated. The caller's voice was a constant murmur about lost parts and fragmented memories. "Look, I need a second here, okay?" Chad grumbled into the line. "I'm putting you on a quick hold while I consult my supervisor." He pressed the hold button with a confident click. I was taking a call from a client who spoke of the feeling of floating between stations with no destination. But a sudden chill swept through my cubicle. The hum in my headset intensified. I looked at Chad. He was pale. The 60 seconds passed. The muffled elevator music that usually played on echoing voices' hold line had been replaced by nothing. A silence that wasn't an absence of sound, but a presence, an oppressive presence. Rule number 1, never, ever put a caller on hold for more than 60 seconds. Because what fills the silence on the line is something far, far worse than elevator music. It's the very voice of the void. Chad tried to take the caller off hold. The button didn't respond. His screen froze. Then, from his headset, I swear I heard a whisper. It wasn't the caller's voice. It was Chad's name, his real name, whispered by dozens of voices in unison, like sand blowing through a cavern. Evelyn appeared, gliding into Chad's cubicle. Her transparent eyes were fixed in his headset. She didn't say a word, just reached out and forcibly shut down Chad's computer. The silence on his line broke, but not in a comforting way. It just stopped. Chad was trembling. His eyes, once ambitious, now looked hollow. He tried to speak, but his voice came out weak, hoarse, with the strange metallic echo. I can't." Evelyn sent him home, but the next day, Chad was back. He still sat in his cubicle, but he no longer took calls. He just talked to himself, or seemed to talk. His lips moved, answering questions only he heard. His voice, once full of life, was now a tangled web of echoes that made my head spin. He was connected, and he couldn't hang up anymore. Chad's experience terrified me. I adhered to the rules religiously. Evelyn seemed to observe my every move, a silent guardian against the abyss. But the more I listened, the stranger the calls became. The callers weren't just disconnected, they were lost. And some of them seemed to be looking for something. One day, a caller rang, her voice a weak thread of sound, speaking of a memory fragment and an exit door. She requested a total reconnection service, a complete re-engagement. I knew it wasn't in the script. My mind froze, but Evelyn's instruction resonated in my head. Rule number 3. If a caller requests a specific connection or service that is not in your standard script, transfer them to Special Services, extension 473. I dialed the extension. The caller's voice changed, from weak to an icy clarity, filled with an almost painful hope. "Thank you, Operator 734, finally." And then the line went dead. I felt a chill, a strange sensation that I had done more than just transfer a call. I had opened a door. The whispers outside my headset began, low, muffled, as if they came from within the building itself. Rule number 6. Do not acknowledge any sounds coming from outside your headset. I ignored them. I tried, but they were persistent, and over time, they began to whisper my name. Eleanor! Eleanor Vance! Exactly like the whisper in Chad's headset. Chad now was a disturbing sight. His eyes, once ambitious, were empty, and his lips constantly moved, answering voices only he heard. He was becoming a phantom receptionist for the callers. One night, as I passed his cubicle, I caught a glimpse of one of his callers. The voice came through his headset, crystal clear, but distorted by pain. Ellie? Ellie, can you hear me? Help me get out. I can't disconnect. It was Sarah's voice. My Sarah, the client I had failed to help. Guilt hit me like lightning. What was happening? Was Sarah here? Guilt turned into obsession. Sarah was connected to this place. I had to get her out. My job of just reading a script transformed into a frantic search. I started investigating echoing voices discreetly during the rare breaks. I rummaged through the dusty office archives hidden in a back closet. I found old documents about Nexus Echo Industries. It wasn't just a discontinued electronics company. It was an obscure organization, founded in the early 80s, involved in paranormal research and attempts at interdimensional communication. The Echoing Voices building wasn't a typical office. It had been built over a nexus of psychic resonance, a place where the barrier between dimensions was dangerously thin. Nexus Echo's discontinued electronic devices weren't the primary product. They were just the disguise. They were transceivers, filters, and the callers. They weren't product users. They were echoes. They were consciousness fragments, lost souls from other planes, or perhaps people trapped in a kind of limbo. They sought connection, human attention, to stabilize, to manifest. Echoing Voices and its rules were a buffer system, a system to manage and filter this desperate search for connection, preventing the nexus from fully opening. With each call, each client I helped with my script, I was channeling a fraction of their energy, keeping them contained, but never truly freeing them. I found an old confidential report dated 3 years prior, the same year Sarah was gone. It was titled Transfer Failure, Project PSI. I read it, horror growing within me. It was about a caller who had managed to break the script and establish an unmediated connection with a counselor. The counselor's name was Eleanor Vance. The caller's name was Sarah Davies. Sarah was not just a failed client. She had become one of the echoes. My failure hadn't lost her, but had imprisoned her here in this purgatory of calls. And now, she was calling me. The truth devastated me. I had to save her. I had to break the cycle. I approached Evelyn's desk, my mind in a whirlwind. She was hunched over her computer, but her fingers seemed to dance over an invisible keyboard. "Evelyn," I said, my voice trembling, "I know about Sarah. I know about the callers. This place, it's not what it seems, is it?" She slowly lifted her head, her pale blue eyes piercing me. There was no surprise, just an ancient, exhaustive melancholy. "I figured you'd find out, Eleanor. It's the curse of your sensitivity, the same thing that brought you here." "What are they?" I asked. "Can they be saved?" Evelyn sighed, a sound that seemed to drag centuries of weariness. They are echoes, Eleanor. Incomplete phrases, lost emotions, seeking finalization. The nexus here is like a sieve, and they are the sand that can't pass through. We are the fingers that guide them, keep them in shape, prevent the sieve from tearing. She paused, her eyes examining every inch of my faith. You think I'm just a supervisor, don't you? She held out her hand, and in her palm there was a spiral-shaped scar, like an ancient microphone etched into her skin. I broke rule number 1 in my first year. I put a caller on hold for over an hour. He came through, and I couldn't disconnect. The shock hit me. Evelyn wasn't just an employee. She was a guardian. She was connected. I don't save them, Eleanor. I manage them, all of them, constantly. It's the only way to keep the nexus closed and your world safe. Every rule is a line of defense, a part of the protocol. But Sarah, she's still looking for help, I protested. I heard her voice. They adapt. They learn. Your Sarah is an echo that uses your voice, your memory, to try and connect, to stabilize, to exist again. But she is not your Sarah, not anymore. And if you try to help her outside the protocol, you will only become part of the connection. She gestured to Chad's station. He was swaying back and forth, his lips moving in a silent dialogue with a dozen voices. Chad tried to reinvent the rules. He wanted to connect with them, feel what they felt. Now he's one of the extensions. He doesn't take calls. He is the calls. I felt terror rise in my throat. Evelyn was telling me there was no salvation, only management. And I, Eleanor Vance, who failed to save one soul, had accidentally imprisoned her. It was 2:45 in the morning. The hum in the air was almost unbearable. The cubicles seemed to pulse with the muffled voices of the callers. Evelyn was tense, watching the clock. The 3 a.m. deadline was approaching. Rule number 7, as the clock strikes 3 a.m., all lines must be clear. Disconnect immediately. Evelyn had warned me. It's the bleeding point, Eleanor. If a line is open or an operator still connected, the nexus barrier, it breaks. My phone rang. It was Sarah. Her voice was clearer than ever, more real. Not a distant echo, it was her, full of pain, but with a trace of hope. Ellie? Ellie, can you hear me? I'm here. I'm trapped. You have to help me get out. You have to connect me. My heart broke. It was her, my Sarah. I looked at Chad. His empty eyes turned to me, a sickly smile on his lips. He was whispering, "Connect her, Ellie. Connect her. It's her chance." Evelyn from her desk screamed, "Eleanor, disconnect, now, it's almost 3, don't break Rule 7. But how could I? How could I hang up on Sarah again? My guilt, my failure, the chance for redemption was now. I looked at my script. No total reconnection button, no way to save. But Sarah's voice was desperate. "Ellie, I trust you, help me get through." I remembered something one of the voices an old caller had told me, almost inaudibly. The real connection isn't in the script. It's in the resonance, in the word you know. I broke Rule 7. I ignored Evelyn. I ignored Chad. I ignored everything. I raised the microphone of my headset, and instead of reciting a script phrase, I spoke a word, a personal word, one only Sarah and I knew. A word that was the code for a secret we shared from a therapy session long ago. Light. The moment the word left my mouth, a deafening sound swept through the room. It wasn't an echo. It was a wave of feedback. All open lines merged. All the voices, all the whispers, all the fragmented cries of the callers erupted from every headset, every monitor. The building groaned. The lights flickered and exploded in a chorus of cracks and sparks. The telemarketing room became a symphony of chaos. I felt a sharp stab in my head, a pain like 1,000 needles piercing my brain, and then silence. A different silence, not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of total absorption. I was no longer in my cubicle. I was no longer in the building. I was everywhere. I was on every line. I was every call. Evelyn found me, or what was left of me. I was sitting in my cubicle, headset still on, computer off. My eyes were open but empty. My mouth moved in inaudible whispers. She didn't say a word, just gave a look of profound sadness and resignation. I didn't die, nor was I assimilated by the building. The curse of echoing voices telemarketing was far more cruel. I was home, lying in my bed, staring at the ceiling. But the silence was a lie. I heard the calls, constantly, all of them, the pleas for connection, the murmurs about disconnection, the fragmented cries of lost souls. All the voices of the callers were now in my head. No script, no hold buttons, no hanging up. I heard Sarah. She was still there, a clear and persistent echo amidst the chorus. She still sought connection, but now her voice was intertwined with the others. And I was connected to all of them. My mind was the ultimate call center. I was the direct line to the nexus. I had failed to save Sarah, but I had become the key to her and to their existence. Evelyn Hayes visited me a few weeks later. She didn't seem surprised. She just sat by my bed, her transparent eyes as empty as mine. "I told you the rules, Eleanor," she whispered, her own voice echoing with a ghostly melancholy. "Some connections can't be broken. I am the supervisor. You are the receptionist. Now, the callers have a direct line forever." She still worked at echoing voices. She was still the guardian of the external buffer, but I was the internal buffer, the final line, my empathy, my need to help, my guilt for Sarah. It all became my prison. I was the call center that never closed. The curse wasn't death, but eternal connection. The calls never stopped, not for a second. With each new fragment of a soul that passed through the nexus, a new voice joined the chorus in my mind. I became an ocean of echoes, a receptacle for all the lost connections that echoing voices tried to manage. At first, I tried to resist. I tried to silence them, to focus on the real world, but it was useless. The voices were part of me now. They mixed with my own thoughts, whispered in my dreams, narrated my life with the melancholy of 1,000 lost souls. I wasn't a prisoner of the building, but a prisoner of my own mind, transformed into a human terminal for digital hell. Sarah was there, a constant reminder of my failure and my eternal connection. I couldn't save her, but with every breath I heard her, I felt her. I was the link that kept her and all the others existing somewhere between worlds. Evelyn continued her work, a shadowy figure, keeping the old building standing. She was the tip of the iceberg. I was the silent abyss beneath the surface, the true echoing voices telemarketing, the endless call center where customer service was an eternity of listening without being able to disconnect. So next time you hear a strange call, a silent line, or a hum on the phone, remember, maybe it's not a technical issue, maybe it's an echo, and maybe it's looking for you. If you work in a call center, especially the night shift, pay close attention to the rules. Because some companies don't care about your satisfaction. They care about your connection. But call centers aren't the only places with strange rules that keep terrible things at bay. Sometimes, the most dangerous instructions come from the place where you seek rest and silence. Imagine an indoor public swimming pool, ancient tiles, the disturbing echo of an empty space, the water always immaculate, crystal clear under the low lighting that casts deep shadows. You are the night lifeguard, and there are rules. Rules about what you shouldn't see in the water's reflection. Rules about the sounds you shouldn't investigate, and above all, the rule of never, ever rescuing someone from the water who shouldn't be there. Subscribe to the channel and join us for more bone-chilling tales of twisted rules that could save your life or cost you everything you hold dear.